Boris Johnson is back in the news this week, so I thought this was a good opportunity to look at what caused his resignation, compare that to Keir Starmer's scandals, and ask, who do you think is dodgier? Boris was found to have breached COVID rules over a birthday cake. Keir Starmer managed to get away with a beer and an Indian takeaway in Durham. The police deemed there were no rules broken there. He's also facing questions over videos that he recorded at Lord Ali's £18 million penthouse, which he clearly tried to pass off as being his own home, despite saying that he hasn't done that. During those videos, he urged people to stay at home where possible. One major report into Boris's wrongdoing was written by Sue Gray, who has gone on to become Starmer's chief of staff. That raises serious questions, but the media still don't want to talk about it.
You know, who investigated this thing? Why don't you tell our viewers who investigated it?
I don't want to go down the avenue. Sue Gray.
And who is, just to remind our viewers who Sue Gray is.
Sue Gray is a leading civil servant.
What post does she currently hold?
We're not going down this road.
Why not?
No, we can't possibly go down that road. Well, sorry, why not? One thing that did for Boris was his relationship with Dominic Cummings, who was seen as a bit mad. Starmer's Sue Gray has already been accused of bringing staff to tears, and the chief civil servant, Simon Case, has already resigned. A committee found that Boris misled Parliament over parties at Downing Street. A leader of that committee was Yvette Cooper, who is now our Home Secretary. When it comes to misleading Parliament, Keir Starmer has faced allegations of threatening the Speaker of the House of Commons, Lindsay Hoyle, over a Gaza vote, claims he vehemently denies. He also gave the strong impression to Parliament that Labour wouldn't scrap the winter fuel payment for pensioners.
Last year, the Prime Minister was apparently drawing up plans to remove the winter fuel allowance from pensioners. So will he now rule out taking pensioners' winter fuel payments off them to help fund his £46 billion black hole?
Well, he has now done exactly that and taken those winter fuel payments off them. Boris ultimately went for his support for Chris Pincher, who had been accused of inappropriate behaviour, and Boris probably should not have stood by him for as long as he did. But Keir Starmer had no problem welcoming turncoat MP Natalie Elphicke into the Labour Party, despite her being forced to apologise for negative comments she made about her ex-husband's sexual assault victims. The general perception of Boris, pumped out by the Labour Party and the establishment left-wing media, is that he was a bit dodgy, elitist and cavalier with the financial rules. Well, Keir Starmer, a multi-millionaire, accepted more than £100,000 in donations and freebies, including clothes for his own wife. Despite telling us nothing was wrong with that, he has now handed £6,000 back. Why? One of the claims about Boris Johnson was that he always felt as though he was above the rules. So does Keir Starmer not have to pay tax on the remaining donations? He's exempt, isn't he? Boris was slammed for having a close relationship with people like Mr Lebedev, a Russian-British businessman who found his way into the House of Lords. Keir Starmer appears to have given an access all areas pass to Lord Wahid Ali after he gave loads of free stuff to a lot of different Labour politicians, who now stands accused, by the way, of meddling in the Iraqi election and meeting Syrian despot Bashar al-Assad and pushing for him not to be deposed. Keir Starmer also got into hot water immediately after several Labour supporters and donors were mysteriously parachuted into the impartial civil service. Interesting that, isn't it? Starmer's Labour Party's largest pre-election donation was from a Cayman Islands-based hedge fund that has interest in arms manufacturing, private healthcare and fossil fuels, something they did not want to declare until after the election. Why not? Starmer's Labour Party is also now embroiled in a cash for access scandal involving Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds, where various business leaders could have paid up to £30,000 to meet with Mr Reynolds. That's the kind of thing that arguably could normally lead to a resignation. But because lovey favourite Ed Miliband has tried to make it all go away by saying, let's just make sure we don't ever do this again, chaps, Starmer's cabinet remains intact. Boris ran a general election campaign centred on this point: I'll get Brexit done. Now, look, we can argue all day, can't we, about whether his Brexit deal is any good, but he did get one. Keir Starmer did not run a general election campaign saying that he'd give away a bit of British sovereign territory, remove the winter fuel payment from pensioners and borrow £3.1 billion to pay the unions. So, who was more honest there? Now, may I remind you that we are not even 100 days into Keir Starmer's premiership. And I'm just going to ask you this. If you hadn't been conditioned by the establishment media to tell you that Boris is a bad guy and Starmer is a good guy, and you just looked at their rap sheets side by side, Who would you say is dodgier? Let's get thoughts from my panel this evening. We've got political consultant Suzanne Evans. We've also got commentator and presenter as well, Alex Armstrong, and broadcaster and journalist JJ Anasobi. Suzanne, I'll start with you. I mean, looking at that in the cold light of day, I'm starting to wonder whether or not actually Keir Starmer might be a bit worse than Boris Johnson.
Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? I think people looking at this, and we thought the Conservative government was embroiled in sleaze and doing very bad things, and then people voted Labour, and now look at what we've got. And it's like, are all politicians like this? Are they all completely beneath the pale? Is there an honest man or woman among them? It's just 3 months. Like you say, not even 100 days since the general election. And we have had a daily dose of sleaze, of lies, of corruption, of bribery, gift-taking, all this stuff. And it's just absolutely shocking. I mean, you missed one out. There's another one today, isn't there? Dale Vince, the environmental activist, who is apparently getting divorced. He's given the Labour Party millions. His wife is claiming that he's going to get a seat in the House of Lords and he's trying to divorce her quickly so she can't use the title. I mean, this is the reports. I'm just repeating the reports.
I mean,
it just keeps coming. It never stops.
Well, yeah, whether or not that Dale Vince thing turns out to be true,
we shall see.
We have to wait and see, don't we? But yeah, Alex, I mean, you know, you look at those two kind of rap sheets there, and you've got the media even just today. You've got the ITV say, oh, we can't talk about. Sorry, why can't we talk about the idea that the woman who is now Starmer's chief of staff was the one who really, really helped do for Boris Johnson?
Well, they never had a problem talking about Dominic Cummings. They talked about him almost every day at one point in time. So this is complete hypocrisy from ITV, quite frankly. And all of this reminds me of that headline, and I think it was the Daily Mail, where it said, Rishi Sunak said, 100 days, Starmer will ruin Britain. Well, he was absolutely right, wasn't he? He was absolutely right. Sanctimonious Starmer has sat on this moral high horse for many, many years. He's pointed the finger. He said he's going to clean up politics. Well, like you said, look at the rap sheet. Look at the rap sheet. This is one of the most crony governments I've seen. They are up to their eyeballs in it.
Well, come on, JJ. Look, you know, this is...
Just be honest, man. Don't hold back.
Don't hold back, eh?
Look, you know, JJ, is Starmer not... Has he not already done worse stuff than Boris Johnson ever did?
I don't think so. Here's the problem. When Boris Johnson was king of sleaze and leading a party that was full of sleaze every day...
Oh, well, we've been trumped by now.
Starmer and co, and when it was Corbyn as well, they all criticised the Tories part of being sleazy. But now, Starmer's being criticised because of the hypocrisy. He's done nothing worse, I don't think, than Boris Johnson did. But the reason I think Boris Johnson is still worse than Starmer is because 62 people resigned, and that's what forced Boris Johnson to resign. When you include the ministers, the private secretaries, the trade envoys, people who were seeing him day to day in his own party said, enough is enough, you're not fit for office, and they resigned. Furthermore, when it comes to the sexual assault allegations of people around him, Boris Johnson did not see anything wrong with promoting people around him, giving people power who had been accused and admitted to sexual impropriety. That, for me, is worse than anything Starmer has done thus far.
OK, so what you're saying, JJ, actually, is that Conservative MPs recognised that Boris was a wrong one, if you like, and they got rid of him. So why aren't these Labour MPs doing the same thing? What does that say about Labour MPs, that they're sitting there doing sod all?
Well, I'll tell you.
Half of them are clearly just as bad.
90%
of them. The honour.
Well, you're right. And 90% of those Labour MPs are brand new. They're worried about their careers. They want to suck up to Starmer to make sure that they get their next job. And the old guard haven't been in power for so long that they've now got a taste of it and don't want to let go of it, so they don't want to kick him out. And frankly, JJ, as you know as much as I do, right, that Angela Rayner is scratching at the doors at number 10. She can't wait to get her hands on the doors, can she?
Well, go on. Look, do you think... Look,
I love this guy.
What's your bromance going on? Very left out.
When we have a look at some of the... You know, so we've got a business secretary who's got some serious questions to answer over a couple of things. We've got an environment secretary who stands accused of accepting around £2,000 worth of football tickets from a company that pumped sewage into the rivers. You've got whatever's gone on with, you know, Starmer and Lord Ali's pads and COVID accusations and all of that. You know, you rattle all of that up. I mean, that is the kind of thing that Boris Johnson would have been hauled before an inquiry fronted up by, no doubt, some very prominent Labour MPs.
There we go.
And then the results come in and he's got to go. Why is there a double standard?
Let's not pretend as if these committees who do the inquiries are all just Labour. It's crossbench. It's not just one party in charge of those things. It's politicians working together. But you're quite right. If it was Johnson who is leading this party currently, he'd be hauled over the coals for it, purely because it was an everyday occurrence for so long. It's barely been 3 months. Let's see where Labour are in 6 months' time.
It was an everyday occurrence. I mean, we get a new Allygate allegation every day. Lord Ali Bye-Bye. I mean, what else has he bought?
Ali Bye-Bye.
It's the power of... for me, it's the power of perception. Because Boris Johnson... well, I was going to say I'm not sure how hard he had to work at this, but cultivated an image of a man who's, slightly chaotic. Right?
Say the least.
And all of that, right? And so then, if the glove fits, then you're in office and there's all this. Keir Starmer has cultivated a perception of himself as being Mr. Forensic, Mr. Rules. And I actually think that's what's covering for him a lot here, because people go, well, surely it can't be that wrong. This must have been an honest mistake, or we can just breeze past this. Whereas actually, when you lay it out on paper, like we've just done there, if you were blind to this, if this was a blind CV, I don't think you'd think that there was any difference between the two.
He's a lawyer. I think that makes this worse. Keir Starmer is a lawyer. He should know what the rules are down to the last I and the last T crossed, and he's broken them.
Well,
no excuse.
I think, he denies breaking the rules.
Well, he does. He does deny breaking the rules, of course, but that doesn't mean that he hasn't broken them. And
He's paying
there's
the
lots
money
of
back.
Listen,
why would he be paying the money back?
Well, I think there's a moral high ground thing there. Say I put £6,000. Well, where's the other £101,000 left to go? That's almost his whole year's salary, or at least half of him and Victoria Sponge's salary together. So look, I think there's a long way to go for him to prove himself that actually, this is my moral horse that I want to get off of. But I will say this. Keir Starmer's got to be very careful. I'm sure this will not be the end of the stories, and I suspect let's see what happens next year.
All right. Well, look, just on that, Joji, has he got to be careful? Mainly because of the puritanical approach that he took before. Being Mr. Rules, being everything, and actually, it is becoming incredibly easy to draw together a catalogue of things that either he's been involved with himself or that he is now in charge of. So if you have cabinet ministers who are the cash for access stuff, there is a strong denial there from Jonathan Reynolds that he ever knew anything. Presumably, he would have been teleported to the Ivy in Manchester one day and he was unaware and just paid £30,000 to be there for a croissant. But Starmer's now in charge of that. So if he's presiding over that, it's that thing of, Boris Johnson was supposedly in charge of a chaotic Downing Street, wasn't he? Well, presumably so is he.
Yeah, and this is the exact problem. Labour have been so pious the whole time that everyone was like, OK, we're going to see some change. They would have to be whiter than white in order to succeed now. They can't do a single thing wrong. Even the expenses to the penny has got to be accurate, because otherwise people are going to drill them for it, absolutely. The reason Labour are in power is because the Tories for 14 years have become so unpopular. Labour are not popular. Yeah. They are not a popular party. Keir Starmer is not the leader this country wants, but he was the only choice we had left, apparently. So that's why he's there. I don't think he'll be in charge at the next election.
You know what's interesting about that message of change is that they've actually pushed forward a lot of Tory policies into this government. I mean...
Like giving away the islands.
James cleverly started that, right? Yes. Let's be fair. James cleverly did start that negotiation. The net zero carbon capture plot, that was a Tory policy. So, look, they're not really much of a change party, are they?
No, OK, fine. Look, we're gonna move it on now. I will just say, look, as everybody knows, as it currently says, there's no indication that Labour have broken the law, and I think it's almost not broken the law, all of that stuff. It's just simply, drawing all of these different allegations together. It makes for an interesting read, in my view.